Takadosh Boker Or Masechet Menahot Daf Yomi Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph 103A1 says the Mishnah. The Mishnah says Haomer Hare Alai Mincha Min Seorim. If somebody is going to say that he's going to bring a mincha from the Seorim, so he says that means he's bringing it from barley instead of wheat. Yavi Minachitim. He's going to bring it from wheat, right? Why? Because there's no such thing as a mincha which is coming from barley. It only comes from wheat, right? Yavi Kemach Yavi Solet. If he says that he's going to bring it from Kemach, he can't. He has to bring it from Solet. Why? Because it's only going to be brought from solet, which is the fine flour. Below shemen ulo levona. Imagine he comes and he says, you know what, I'm going to bring a mincha, but without oil or without frankincense. So yavi shemen ulevona. You're going to bring shemen and levona. Yeah? You want a gemara? Here's a gemara. Yeah? He says, right, chetzi isaron, yavi isaron shalem. He says, I'm going to bring a chetzi isaron. You have to bring an isaron shalem. Isaron umechza. If he's going to bring an isaron umechza, so he says what? So he says, right, Yavi Shnaim, you have to bring 2 Esronot. Meaning, all these things, it's a mincha. You cannot come and say, you know what, I'm only going to bring half. Or I'm going to bring it something different. This is what is called a mincha. Bishimon, he comes and he says, Poter, legamne. You don't have to bring anything. Why? Shelo itnadev kederech hamitnadid. Meaning, even though you came in and you said, anedava, I'm going to bring whatever it is, you didn't really say anything. Why? Because it's nothing. If I say I'm going to bring half of a korban, that's not a korban, so you don't have to bring anything. There's nothing there. You didn't say anything. Right? Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara. Okay? Says the Gemara, Amai, says the Gemara, why is it that he's going to be chayav to bring the mincha at all? Neder upitcho imohu. He says this is a neder and it's petach. So since it's going to be a neder and it's petach, right? So therefore what's going on then? So Amar Chizkiah says Chizkiah, Hamani, who is this? Bet Shammai. This is going to be Bet Shammai. The Amri that they say, Tefos Leshon Rishon. You have to take the first Lashon. Yeah, what does that mean, the first Lashon? He says that if a person says 2 Lashonot and they're soter each other, you take the first thing that he says. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah. Hareni Nazir mina grogirot umina devela. If a person comes and he says that he's going to become a Nazir from dried figs or from dvela, which is also figs which are stuck together. Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai says he's a Nazir. Bet Hillel Omrim, eno Nazir. Why? When you're a Nazir, what is a Nazir from? Wine or grapes. Nothing to do with figs. So therefore, you say Hareni Nazir, but then you say Nazir from what? From the Grogirot Vinadvira. So one second, your first word said you're a Nazir. When you come and you said the words Grogirot Vinadvira, that's not a Nazir, it's a Klum. So therefore, Fos Lashon Rishon says Bet Shammai, you're a Nazir. Bet Hillel says you're not a Nazir. Why? Because from the end of your words, you showed that you're not a Nazir. But there's no such thing as a Nazir from Grogirot and from the Devra. You understand? Tfos Lashon Rishon. We always go after the first thing that you said. So since you said Hareni Nazir, you're a Nazir. You said 2 seconds later from the Grogirot and then from the dried figs and from the stuck figs. Doesn't matter. You go after the first thing that you said. Bet Hillel says, Mapitom. Go after the last thing. And the last thing that you just said, it doesn't exist a Nazir on that. So obviously it was a mistake. Rabbi Yochanan says, Afilu tema Bet Hillel. Even if you want, you could say it's Bet Hillel. Why? Ilu hayiti yodea shenodrin kach, lo hayiti noder kach elakach. He says, because then a person could have said, right, if I would have known that you can't make a neder like that, so then I would have made a neder the other way around. Which means that he's mefaresh, that the reason why he said seorim is not because he wanted to be choser from his neder. He just thought that you were able to bring it that way. Meaning that he made a mistake. He comes and he says, I'm going to bring a mincha. And he says, from where? From the seorim. Now, it doesn't exist a mincha from seorim. Remember, the only one which was from the seorim was the Omer. Chazak Sefirat HaOmer. Right? The Korban HaOmer. The Korban HaOmer was from the seorim. Right? Everything, it's going to be chitin. So Amar Chizkiah says, Shana, what are we dealing with? Ela damar mincha min seorim. Right? He says, that basically when you're going to say this, right? He says, aval imamar mincha min adashim lo. He says like this. He says, since at the end of the day, there is something which is fitting for the mizbeach with seorim, so therefore, right, it is shayach, right, the concept. He says, but if you say from the adashim, from lentils, there no. Because lentils doesn't exist. Yeah, meaning, lentils, everybody knows that you're for sure not going to make a mistake. Right? Lentils never comes to Mizbeach. So there, it doesn't. But if it's going to be Seorim that does come, you would make such a mistake. So says the Gemara, Michti Chizkiya Keman Amar Lishmate. Who's Chizkiya going like? He says like Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai, Omrim Bet Shammai comes and he says, Tefos Lashon Rishonu. Right? You always have to take the Lashon Rishon. Mali mina seorinu, mali mina adashim. Right? What's the difference between the seorim and adashim? Meaning like this. If you go like Bet Shammai, which Bet Shammai says we're always going to go after the first thing that you said. So what do I care now what you said later on? I said seorim. I said adashim. I don't care. What did you say at the beginning? You're bringing a mincha? Bring a mincha. No. If you said mincha from the seorim could come to the mizbeach. So then, but if you said from the adashim, since adashim can never come, but what do I care? If according to Bet Shammai, it's always going to be tefos lashon rishon. So Ma'ich Patli, then what are you going to say afterwards? So answers the Gemara, Hadarbe. You're right, he retracted. Right? And he's actually going to be modeh to Rabbi Yochanan above, that again, that they hold like Betileh, that basically what's happening is he made a mistake, and he said that the Seorim was Ra'ui for the Mincha, and therefore there's going to be a difference, right? The Seorim and the Adashim. Okay? Fine. Now he comes and he says like this, Mai Tama Hadarbe. Why did he retract? So Amar Rava says, Matnitin Kashita. He had a question from our Mishnah. Why did our Mishnah say Mincha min Seorim? Why didn't our Mishnah teach Litne min Adashim? Ela Shema mina, that means we learn from our Mishnah itself that it's only because of the Taebe, right? So Besearim Tae, Badashim lo Tae. Meaning like this. He himself, he had a question from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah could have given you a bigger chidush. If a person comes and he says, I'm going to bring a mincha from the Adashim, the bigger chidush is that even though he said something which bichlal never comes on the mizbeach, you never bring lentils to the mizbeach. But the fact that you first said you're bringing a mincha, you're chayav to bring a mincha. Why didn't we bring that? We taught specifically seorim. So since we taught specifically seorim, he learned from here, meaning he learned from this Mishnah, not like what he wanted to say. He learned that it had to be something which is fitting to come to the mizbeach, and therefore it specifically took seorim and not adashim, and therefore there is going to be a difference between the seorim and the adashim, right? And on also this, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu mina adashim, it's still going to be the same halacha. Yeah, so michti, Rabbi Yochanan, who does Rabbi Yochanan go like? He's going like Bet Hillel. So Bet Hillel says mishum de taehu, right? So tae gamken, but seorim badashim lo tae. One more time. There's a machloke between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai says tefos lashon rishon. We always go after the first lashon that you said. I don't care what you said afterwards. According to Bet Hillel, we go after tefos lashon acharon. We go after the last thing that you said. And the last thing that you said was something completely different or a stira to what you just mentioned beforehand. We only take into account the last thing. So he says, right, if right now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, he's going like Bet Hillel, the reason of Bet Hillel that he says that it's going to be chal, even though he said things which are not fitting for that kava, is because you could make a mistake. You could only make a mistake in seorim. You could not make a mistake in adashim. So therefore, how does Rabbi Yochanan come and he say, according to Tanakama, right, that even if he said adashim, so says the Gemara, you're right. Even according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's lidvarav de Chizkiya kamale. He's saying according to Chizkiya, meaning not according to himself. He's going according to Chizkiya. At maitama hadart bach. Why did you retract? Because we didn't learn from Hadashim. Dilma lo mibaya kamar. Maybe it's a lo mibaya. Lo mibaya min Hadashim di kalamima ma hadar hu de hadar bei tefos lashon arishon el afilu min haseorin nami tei kalamima mitaudu katai afilu achi yamnim tefos lashon lishon. Meaning we're trying to say like this, there should be a bigger chidush to actually teach you, right? And this is what he's asking against Chizkiya. He says, Chizkiya, why did you retract? He says, why? He says, I have got a bigger chidush. If right now, remember, according to Bet Shammai, it's always tefos lashon rishon. When I'm going to say tefos lashon rishon, imagine a case where I'm going to come and tell you that he says mina adashim. It's a lo mibaye. Why lo mibaye? If in a case, right, where a person comes and he said, right, mina adashim, I would have thought to say what? He made a mistake. And still, what do I say? He didn't make a mistake. What? Tefos lashon rishon. So then I don't need to say, right, lo mibaya, I don't need to say the chidush of seorim. Where there really be'emet, you could have made a mistake by seorim. You're still going to say what? Tefos lashon rishon. So therefore he comes and he says, why are you retracting? Right? It doesn't make sense to retract. At the end of the day, right, You will always go after Lashon Rishon, and Lashon Rishon is going to say that even if you don't retract. No, he's going l'shitato. Chizkiah goes like Bet Shammai. So he's asking, according to you, Chizkiah, you're retracting between Adashim and Seorim. He says you go like Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai always says Tfos Lashon Rishon. So therefore, there's a bigger chidush in Seorim. Because I would have thought that Adashim, I would have said, no. He made a mistake. So Tfos Lashon Rishon. But in Seorim, right, where he did, sorry, you cannot make a mistake. Because nobody makes a mistake in Adashim. Adashim, nobody makes a mistake. You never bring a korban from Adashim. If somebody comes and he says, "I want to bring lentils to the mizbeach," he's going to say, "Nafalta min hashamayim, lentils." Right? What happened? Seorim does exist. There's a korban of seorim. So okay, a person made a mistake. So therefore, he says, when I come in the Mishnah and I tell you seorim, it's a chidush. What's a chidush? I would have thought to say that maybe he made a mistake, and therefore, even according to Bet Shammai, it's not good. Kamashmalan, according to Bet Shammai, Tfos Lashon Rishon. Even if I could have said you made a mistake, no. Tfos Lashon Rishon. What is Lashon Rishon? Mincha, you have to bring a mincha. That's Bet Shammai. So Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, Chizkiah, you retracted. Why do you have to retract? If you go according to Bet Shammai, it doesn't work. No, Bet Shammai says, Bet Hillel says nothing. תפוס לשון האחרון, זה כלום. אז אתה לא מביא כלום.
מה היה פה אחרון?
עדשים.
זה מה שאני שואל.
אז אין דבר כזה.
זה מה שאני שואל.
אז בגלל זה הכל בטל. When you have a stira, when I say I'm going to bring a mincha, from what? Adashim. I cannot bring a mincha from Nashim. Or seorim. I cannot bring a mincha from seorim. Bet Shammai says, תפוס לשון ראשון. מה אמרת? תביא מנחה, מנחה. מה אכפת לי מה אמרת בסוף? זה סתירה, אבל לא משנה. בסוף, זה כלום. תפוס לשון ראשון. בית הלל אומרים, תסתכל מה האחרון. לא, בדיוק, בגלל זה סתירה. עוד פעם, רק מדברים כשיש סתירה בין ההתחלה ובסוף. כשאני אומר, הריני נזיר, זה נזיר. על מה? דברים של יין, ענבים. אם אני אומר, הריני נזיר, מן הדבלה ומן how do you call the other figs? The dry, it was מן הדבלה, דבלה והמן הגרוגרות. גרוגרות were תאנים יבשים. But they're both תאנים. תאנים is not nazir. So I've got a סתירה. Are you a nazir or not a nazir? So according to Bet Shammai, you're a nazir. According to Bet Hillel, מה פתאום? לא עשית כלום. אמרת, מן הגרוגרות, מן הדבלה, מה הקשר? מן התאנים. מה הקשר עכשיו nazir from תאנים? So says ק"ג עמוד ב', אמר זהירה, says זהירה, לא שנו אלא דאמר, he comes and he says, what are you talking about? Where he said מנחה. אבל לא אמר מנחה, לא. The only thing is because he said, הרי עלי מנחת שאורים. But if he didn't say it, then we don't say that. What does that mean? When you come and you say, הרי עלי מנחת שאורים, you are doing something which is called smichut. Minchat, this. Right? Minchat, this. So when you do that, or you say, הרי עלי שאורים, without mentioning the mincha at all, so then you're not chayav להביא klum. Right? Why? Because here I'm going to say that for sure it's all one dibur. And since it's all one dibur, he was not mikaven bemet to a mincha. Because you said minchat seorim. You didn't say, I'm going to bring a mincha from the seorim. You said minchat seorim. So for sure it was going to be a different halacha. So he says, Yativ Rav Nachman v'kamala leshmata. So he was coming and sitting and he was saying this braita. And he said, Et ve'rava Rav Nachman. Asks Rava to Rav Nachman, Kemach yavi misolet. Right? When he says Kemach, so you remember we said that you always have to bring it from fine flour, right? Not from solet. Whereas not from Kemach. Kemach is not fine flour. Kemach is just flour, but it's not fine flour. It's to be solet. So my love de lo aman mincha. Obviously he didn't say mincha. Because if he said Hare alai Kemach, obviously in such a case it's still going to be a mincha kshira. So answers the Gemara, no. The amar mincha. He did actually say mincha. So says the Gemara, belo shemen ulvona. What happens if the person comes and he said, I'm going to bring a mincha without oil or frankincense? So Yavin shemen ulvona. He's going to bring shemen ulvona. My love, are we not talking about now the lo amar mincha that he didn't say mincha? Says Gemara, no. The amar mincha. He did say the mincha. So what about chetzi saron? So he has to bring a yisaron shalem. My love, we're not talking about that he didn't say the mincha. No, he did mention the mincha. Once he said the mincha, obviously he's going to be chayav in such a case. Yeah. So he says, Yachiv, so look at the Seifa. Yisaron umechsa yavi shnaim. Kevin the Amar, since he said the mincha, he's going to be chayav one Yisaron. Ki amar chetzi Yisaron, lo amar krum. He didn't actually say anything. Okay? Lo tzricha, what are we dealing with? The Amar that he says, Hare alai mincha, that he says that I have to bring a mincha, chetzi isaron v'isaron. Half an isaron and an isaron. But since he said he has to bring in a mincha, he's going to be chayav an isaron. But once he says chetzi isaron, v'lo klum kamar, he didn't say anything. Ki adar, when he now says isaron, mighty isaron acharina. So he has to bring another isaron. Ihachi, if so, Rabbi Shimon poter, yeah. So he comes and he says like this. He says, right? Iachi, so Rabbi Shimon says it's going to be poter shelo yinadev kederechem medivin. So he says why? So Amarava Rabbi Shimon is going in Shitat Rabbi Yosef that he says af bigmar dvarav atam nitmas, which means that even if a person is going to be at the end of his words, we see ikar dato is only that which he said at the beginning, right? But also on what he said at the end. So according to his shita, when a person says two things which are sotrim ketok dibur, we're not going to divide it into two and to be tofes leshon rishon, but rather we're going to see each one like a separate entity. And therefore, according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, that is going in his Shita, when a person comes and he says, Hare alai mincha, chatzi saron, ve'isaron, we're going to see the chatzi saron ve'isaron like a pirush of the mincha. So it comes out that he was not mitnadev, like the normal thing, and therefore it's going to be batel legamre. So we're taking both into account. So now let's see the next Mishnah. Mishnah Kuf Gimel Amud Bet. So it says like this: Mitnadev adam mincha shel shishim isaron umevi bekli echad. So a person is going to bring a mincha of 60 isaron, okay, and he's going to bring it in one keli. Okay, skip out the brackets. Imamar, if he comes and he says Hare alai shishim ve'echad, right, that I'm going to bring 61, he has to bring 60 in one keli and one in a kli acher, right, another kli, which means that the maximum that we found in one keli is going to be 60 saronot. Okay, sheken matzinu shetzibur mevi, because that's what we found that the tzibur is going to be mevi. B'yom tov rishon shel chag, b'yom tov rishon shel chag, shechal yom b'Shabbat, which is going to come out on Shabbat. That means when Sukkot comes out b'Shabbat, they're going to bring shishim ve'echad esronot for the niske korbanot hayom. Yeah, if you look in the footnote, he's going to explain exactly why, right? He says, between all the chagim and everything like that, he comes and he says, you're going to bring, right, Be'oto yom 39 esronot lekol shlosha asara parim, 4 esronot nosafim for the 2 elim, and 18 esronot for the 18 kvasim, and therefore in total, it's going to be 61. Okay, so that's how if you look, you can see the entire thing, how he gets to that account. So he says, "V'dayol liyachid shiye pachot min hatzibur echad." So it's already enough that the yachid should be less than the tzibur by one. So therefore, the yachid could only be mitznadev in one keli shishim, not shishim ve'echad, because since the tzibur do 61, so we never wanted the yachid could be like a tzibur. So therefore, since the yachid is not a tzibur, right? The yachid is always an individual. He's not a tzibur. So therefore, we don't let him do like a tzibur. Tzibur does 61. So maximum you can do is 60. He says 61. So bring 60 in one keli and one in another keli. But you can never bring 61 in one keli because that's a tzibur. So Amar Rabbi Shimon, says Rabbi Shimon, V'halo elu leparim ve'elu lekvasim ve'enam nivlalim. Right? He says, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me to do with the 61 by the Sukkot and all those things. He says they're not mixed together. Right? When you're going to bring these ones for the Elim, these ones for the Kvasim, they don't mix them together. Ela, but rather, ad shishim yicholim libalel. The reason why is because when you do until 60, you can mix them together. Once it's after 60, it doesn't mix together. So the reason is not because we don't want you to be like a tzibur, but rather because what is the ratio, right, that you're able to come into need together, and that you should have a good batter. Okay, so Amrulo, so they went and they told him, Shishim nivlalin, the Shishim ve'echad enen nivlalin. He says it's a pele gadol. If you're going to tell me that 60 you could need and 61 you cannot need, meaning if you're going to tell me 60 and 50, so okay, I could hear you. You're going to tell me 60 and then 61. It sounds Amar lahem. He says kol midot chachamim. Right? Ken. He says what? All the midot chachamim are exactly like that. Be'arba'im se'ahu, right? Remember that arba'im se'ah is the mikveh. Ube'arba'im se'ah chaser kortov eno yachol litbol b'hem. You have a mikveh of 40 se'ah. Only when you have a mikveh of 40 se'ah, it's good. If it's going to be mamash 40 se'ah lacking a kortov, which is nothing, you can't do tefillah. So you see that all the midot of the chachamim are exactly like that. So this is the thing. You got 60, 61 is not going to be good. Fine. Says the Gemara. Sha'il she'ela lemala min Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. There was asked a question in front of Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. Minayin, how do we know this halacha? Sha'omer arei alai 61, that if a person says that I'm going to bring 61 isronot, he has to bring 60 in one keli and one in another keli. So Patach Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, Rosh Hamdabrim bechol makom. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai came, and he was the Rosh Hamdabrim bechol makom. Yeah, meaning he was the one that always spoke first. Right? Remember that in halachot, right, the golem is always the one that comes and speaks first. Right? But usually a chacham, right, he keeps quiet. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, he was the one that he was the Rosh Hamdabrim. Rosh Hamdabrim means anybody that needs to say something first, he's got the first things. You know, so for example, they're going to analyze a case, they're going to hear a question, they're going whatever it is. Rosh Hamdabrim, he's the one that opens up. He opens the floor. Yeah, I think they have that lavdil fadalot in certain courts and things like that. Right? There's certain. This is the one he starts. There's rules. I mean, it's not just stop. Everybody just comes and jumps up. You understand? There's rules. He's the first one that talks. This is the second. Right? There's etiquette. There's rules. You understand? So he comes now and he says ve'amar. So he says שכן מצינו ציבור מביאים ביום טוב ראשון של חג, שחל להיות בשבת, 61, תלוי ליחיד שיבחור מן הציבור אחד. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai brought down what we brought down in our Mishnah, not like Shitat Rabbi Shimon, right, that you like, right, but rather like the Shita of the Tanakama, yeah, which is what? We don't want that a Yachid should be a Tzibur. There's a Tzibur and there's a Yachid, right? You have to know there's a difference. Amalo Rabbi Shimon, says Rabbi Shimon, Palo, אלו פרים ואלים ואלו כבשים, אלו בלי לטן עבה ואלו בלי לטן דקה, אלו בלי לטן שחרי ואלו בלי לטן בין ארבעים, ואין נבללים זה מזה. Look how many differences you have, right, between one and the other. You've got a lot of differences between one and the other. So Amar lo, he tells him, emor ata. So you tell me the reason then. Amar lo, he tells him, הרי הוא אומר, it says in the pasuk, וכי מנחה בלולה ושמן וחרבה, כבר אמרה תורה, ומנחה שיכולה להיבלל. Bring a mincha, which could become בלולה. Right? Bring it. That you could come and you could do the belula means that you could do the mix, the kneading, right, of it together. So Amarlo, he told them, Amarlo, the exact same thing, כל מידות חכמים כן הוא. ב-40 שעה הוא טובל, וב-40 שעה חסר כתוב, ואני יכול לטבול. כביצה מטמא טומאת אוכלין, כביצה חסר שמשום, אין מטמא טומאת אוכלין. 3 על 3 טפחים מטמא מדרס, 3 על 3 חסר, נימה אחת, אינו מטמא מדרס. So you see that there's such a concept that the midot חכמים, וגמרנו. So he says, "V'chi en nivlalin may have." He says, "What is not going to be in a nivlalin? Vatnanim lo balal kasher." We learned that even if you didn't do the belila at all, it's still kosher. So Amar Bizera says, "Bizera kol ha'ra'ui lebila, em bila me'akevet bo. V'chol she'eno ra'ui lebila, bila me'akevet bo." This is a very interesting halacha that whenever be'emet, right, the bila, right, is me'akev or not me'akev, he says, if right now you're able to do it and you didn't do it, so then what? It's not makev. But if you're not able to do it, right? So therefore, when you didn't do it, it is makev. So I'll give you an example. When you go into the mikveh, do you have to open up your eyes?
Technically speaking,
no.
No?
Nope. You don't have to open up your eyes when you go into the mikveh. Yeah? But can you go in with contact lenses? No. Why? Because if it was fitting, yeah, b'diuk. So he says, if right now he was fitting for him to open up his eyes and the water is going to get there, so therefore, even if the fact that he didn't open up his eyes, it's not going to be a chatzitza. But the fact that if he would open up his eyes, it doesn't get there anymore because now he's got contact lenses. So then be'emet, right, it does not help. Yeah? So Amar Rav Bevaib, Amar Rav Yoshua ben Levi, says Rav Bevaib in the name of Yoshua ben Levi, Maaseh bepirda achat shel Bet Rebbe shemeta. There was a story of a pirda achat of Bet Rebbe, right, that died, right, this mule. So they went and they tested how much blood is going to come out. Arvit. Now we know that the Revi'it is the shiur of Tumat Nevela. So if so, you're not allowed to touch the animal because it already came out the Revi'it of Dam. So therefore you see from here that all the midot the Chachamim came and they said was exact. Yeah? So he comes now and he says as follows. He says, Ya Mativ Rav Yitzchak bar Bisna. He did Rabbi Yoshua ben Metera, right? He testified Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanyan, Rabbi Yoshua ben Metera. Al dam nevlot shu taor. They were coming and killing chamore bar, like wild donkeys, la'arayot, in order to give them to the lions. V'histaria shel melech, right, in the Yisrael Shem. And there was so much blood that they were going up to do Aliyah Regel. And Mamasha, Velo Amru Lahem Davar, they didn't say anything. Meaning they didn't tell them that after they were going in this blood, that they had to come and do Tevilah. So therefore, it's a problem. So Ishtik, he kept quiet. Why? He didn't know how to answer. So Amaleh Rabbi Zireka, my time more. Why didn't he answer? Amaleh Hechi Adale. How did you want to return? Why did you want to answer? The Amar Bichanin says Bichanin, Vayu Chayecha Turim Licha Mineged. Right? This is part of the brachot, obviously, which means that basically this is one of the klalot, right, of the dagav parnasa. So he says, Zeh lokeach tvua mishana nishana. Right? You're going to purchase the tvua from one year to another. Now, why? Your life is in front of you because you're always afraid. Maybe he's not gonna have money to buy. So therefore, he's gonna have to buy just for the entire year. Just so he doesn't know. So from one week to another week. You're not even going to believe in your life. This is a somech al paltad. You're going to be somech on your paltad. Why? Because it could be happening that all of a sudden you're not going to get anything tomorrow, then you don't have any bread. So therefore, that's going to be like that. So he says, "Va'u gavra," but that person, which is Zani, Rav Bevai, meaning he's speaking about himself. Al paltar samich. I'm going to be somech on the paltar. May have Allah. We're just going to get to the Mishnah and Kuftala the Mudalef. May have Allah. What's the maskana? Amar of Yosef says of Yosef. Rabbi Yehuda Moriana de Venesiava. He was the Moreo Rav, the Bet Arasi. Orale Kishmateni. He taught according to the Shmaita. The Tanya we learned in the Braita. Rabbi Yehuda says Shishad Vanim are going to be Mikule Bet Shamayim Chimeret Hillel. Do you know that usually Bet Hillel is always Mekel. Bet Shammai is always Machmir. Here there's 6 things that Bet Shammai is Mekel and the Bet Hillel is going to be Machmir. Dam Nevelot, Bet Shammai is Metarim, Bet Hillel Metamin. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Af Kitemu Bet Hillel, Lo Temu Brevit. Because when you come and you take a revit and then you're going to coagulate it, it's going to become like a kazait. That's why it's going to be only in that case that Bemet, the Bet Hillel, is going to be Machmir.